and pass it over to you. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nettie, and it's great to see you and meet this Sangha in Canberra. Um, I was thinking about our friendship for many years as well, Nettie. When I was thinking about this talk and what it is to one of the great benefits, in addition to all the many aches and pains and ailments of, of getting to be 60 years old, is to have known people for a great deal of time and to see many seasons in our lives together and to see what that's like. And it can be both a beautiful thing and a terrible thing to be open to friendships and to be open to abiding with others, abiding with the world, abiding with people that you love. Any parent, we were talking about being parents, and what a wonderful thing it is to be a parent in many ways, but also what a painful thing and a terror-filled thing to see your heart moving around in the world with two legs that are not your own, and to love the world and also to feel its pain, to live with wholehearted love, as it were. And so, I thought for the theme of today, I was going to talk about friendship, and particularly that word that we'll talk about more as we go along, Kalyana Mitra, which is a Sanskrit word for friendship. And I think many of you will have heard the story how Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, was speaking to the Buddha about friendship, and he was saying, it seems to me, to hold each other on the path and to abide with the world in friendship. It seems to me a very major part of what the Dharma is. And the Buddha Gautama said, "No, you're wrong, Ananda. It's not a very big part of the Dharma. It is the whole of the Dharma." And so this is something that's really helpful to us in terms of how we look at our practice and how we hold our practice in our lives. Friendship, the whole of the way. What is it to meet? What is it to meet the way in the nature of Kalyana Mitra? What is it to make ourselves companions for the path together that we travel, but also to hold that same sense of warmth and curiosity and engagement with every single thing that we meet. So, with that theme in mind, I'd like to share with you a koan that comes from the Entangling Vines collection, a Rinzai tradition koan collection. In it, we have two friends, the poet Shangui and the Zen master Huiteng Zhuxin, and he'll be going Zhuxin throughout it. So one day, Shangu was visiting Huiteng. They were talking and inquiring together, and Huiteng said, "You know the passage in which Confucius says, 'My friends, do you think I'm hiding something from you? In fact, I'm hiding nothing from you.' Well, it's just the same with the great matter of Zen. Do you understand this?" The poet Shangu replied, I don't understand." Later, Huiteng and Shangu were walking in the mountains, where the air was filled with the scent of sweet olive blossoms. Huiteng asked, "Do you smell the fragrance of the blossoms?" Shangui said, "I do." And Huiteng said, "You see, I'm hiding nothing from you." At that moment, Shangui was enlightened. 2 months later, he visited Shishin Wijin. Shishin repeated him and said, "I'll die and you'll die, and we'll end up burnt into two heaps of ashes. At that time, after our death, where will we meet?" Shangui tried to respond but couldn't come up with anything. Later, while on the road to Chianan, he woke from a nap and suddenly understood Shishin's intent. Thereafter, he attained the samadhi of perfect freedom. So, do you think I'm hiding anything from you? In fact, I'm hiding nothing from you. That's really where this story has its energy. How do we understand this? How do we practice something? It's this idea of, do you think I'm hiding something from you, can be quite a natural response or or a thought to occur to us as we, particularly when we're entering into the Zen path, and we have all these strange knowledge that our teachers or the ancestors seem to possess that really doesn't seem to make any sense sometimes to us, and it's quite natural to think, is there some secret experience or something added in transmission or something? There's some shortcut that you have been holding back from me this whole time, that once I have this, all this stuff will make sense. Surely if we can just get a hold of that one little secret shortcut, then the whole universe will absolutely make sense. And it's a pretty funny thing to think that, people who have dedicated their lives would have, engaged in such a subterfuge. But with Confucius and with Shishin saying, "I'm hiding nothing from you," there's a really important and powerful pronouncement in those words. I'm hiding nothing from you. What does this mean? How do we hold this? What is this, our experience, when we realize this for ourselves of, I'm hiding nothing from you? What would be the great matter if there was something and if there was something worthy of being hidden? What he's pointing to when I hold nothing back from this moment, from this meeting, even just to notice the subtle place where we stand, the sense of holding ourselves in relationship to the world, is completely bare, completely naked under the sky. What is there to be hidden back? To completely, it's easy to say, but it must happen from a place beyond our willing it to be so, to have just the sight of a lemon tree, to hear the sounds of the birds, or feel a slight sneeze building up on a thing, just to be with that thing, not as a thing that we are, there's a secret in it, but just to have it come towards us and allow it to be, allow ourselves to be penetrated by it. It's an interesting, there's an interesting story about the nuns of the Tokeji Temple in Japan, where they took up a practice called mirror meditation. This is from medieval times, so it wouldn't have been mirrors in terms of a glass mirror, but a polished piece of bronze that reflected back to them. And what they would do is they would gaze at these mirrors, not in terms of cultivating attachment or checking out, how they look. Although we'd be forgiven for, oftentimes our phones can become gazing at mirrors, staring at mirrors now, taking constant selfies. But this is a very different type of practice. They would gaze at the mirror, not cultivating the attachment to what they see, but the practice they called it was practicing the forgotten I as in the letter I, not the I, but the forgotten I, as in allowing the layers of who they are to drop away, of their self, the stories that they hold, their emotions, their conditioning, and just allowing it just to fall into the mirror. A mirror is a beautiful metaphor in many ways for our practice. It's something that is receptive, and yet it clarifies. It holds all things that come into it, but it doesn't retain them. It holds nothing back. It holds nothing permanently. And interestingly, when night fell, they continued, even though there was no light in the room and their mirror no longer could be seen, they continued to gaze they held that same gaze that they'd held during the daytime. The heart mind continues to see into the darkness. There's a phrase from Zen Sans, Victor Hori, who wrote, "We meet but we do not know each other. We speak without knowing names." Very much a description of what this is, to gaze into the darkness, as we do in our Zazen, whether we have a mirror or not. To gaze into the darkness, to gaze into that which holds everything but retains nothing. Yunmen asked a fellow monk, he was in the retreat center, had been doing sesshin. So Yunmen asked a fellow monk, "What have you been doing?" And the monk replied, "I've been talking to a rock." So Yunmen asked him, "Did the rock nod back in reply?" There's a story that a new monk whose first sangha was a group of stones said that the rocks were nodding back to him as he spoke. So Yunmen asked, "Did the rock nod back in reply?" The monk didn't know what to say. And so the Yunmen said to him, "The rock was nodding to you before you began to speak," which is a lovely turnaround there. That those rocks are always listening. The rocks are always not hiding anything from us. The rocks are always abiding with us in friendship. Now and then in our koan tradition, some of you may be practicing koans with Nettie as well. A koan will hook us into a sense of thinking that we have to get it right, or that we have to outthink our situation. Hooking into the idea that you just need to get your opinion right or your clever words right, and that there's a solution to this koan. But eventually, as the koan starts to unfold into our life, we see that there's something much, much bigger than that at stake. Our practice, whether we work with koans or not, is not about any answer we bring to life or any solution we bring to the difficulties of our life, but to bring a sense of warmth and freedom and curiosity, so that we can hear the rocks nodding back to us before we start to speak already. Recently, our car broke down, and I was with my son, and we both happened to think how exciting it is to ride up in the cab with a tow truck driver and talk to the driver and so forth like that. Just like, it was still a great day even though our car broke down. That's sort of the kind of thing. Just the rocks are always nodding back to us. So, this our koan here. Do you think I'm hiding something from you? In fact, I'm hiding nothing from you. Do you understand? And Shangui says, I do not understand. There is something here that is not meant to be understood. When we don't understand, that is a good thing. Stay with this moment as he did, as becomes evident. T.S. Eliot wrote in one of his poems, "I said to my soul, be still and wait without hope, for hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be love of the wrong thing. Yet there is yet faith, but the faith and the love are all in the waiting. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing." Lovely. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing. So, on with our heroes here. Later, Hui Tang and Shanggu were walking in the mountains, where the air was filled with the scent of sweet olive blossoms. Sweet olive blossoms is a type of flowering tree, if you haven't heard of it. I'm not aware of it, having seen it here in Australia, but evidently it was there in Japan. In China. And here's the practice, abiding together, no agenda. They were just walking in the mountains where the air was filled with the scent of sweet olive blossoms. We might equally smell the eucalyptus trees here and hear the birds, and no agenda, just abiding together with the mountain and with each other. So they were walking in the mountains, and Hui Tang asks, "Do you smell the fragrance of the blossoms?" This is not, he's the teacher here, but he's not offering instruction, or he's not offering even any guidance. He just asks the question, and he allows the student Shangui to observe what does not come and go, and is in there implicitly in the situation. Be still and wait without hope, as Eliot said. Shanggu said, "I do." And Hui Tang brings back the question before. Hui Tang, he asks him, "You see, I'm hiding nothing from you." Listen to that phrase though, I'm hiding nothing from you. Is it him, I, the teacher hiding nothing back from you? What is the I in that phrase? What is the I in that question? He's speaking on behalf of the whole universe in a way, including the sweet olive blossoms, including the feel of your feet on the earth, including the touch of breeze on the back of your head. Some of us have a little bit more breeze on the back of our heads than others, but fair enough. Do you smell the fragrance of the blossoms? I am hiding nothing. Completely, we step out of the way of any thought of attaining or achieving or coming and going, and just hear the breeze, feel the breeze, smell the olive blossoms. Let yourself be smelt by the olive blossoms. At that moment, Shanggu was enlightened, it says. I'm hiding nothing. It cannot be given. He realizes something that cannot be given from one person to another. We can only get out of the way. It cannot be given or taken at all. It is not a thing, but it is the nakedness on the ground. When we are naked and beneath the sky, I'm not meaning to sound... I realize I'm saying the word naked a lot here. I'm not meaning to say literally naked, but but the metaphorical nakedness, a metaphorical openness into the world. It is only when we stand like this on the bare ground with no strategy, no plan B, no sense of having a thing that we want to attain, no idea at all what the sweet olive blossoms are about. Then, whatever in that moment of complete vulnerability, it is only then whatever comes forward is the Dharma. Whatever emerges from this moment is the great matter itself. Nagarjuna asked, what do you make of a life that won't go away? Pointing directly into this moment where the sweet olive blossom becomes the Dharma. Wherever is there a place that does not go away? This is a subtle moment of realization, realizing the great matter that has been there all along, and what it is to be a companion of the way. So, 2 months later, in this in our story, Shanggu visited Chishin. Chishin greeted him and said, I'll die and you'll die, and we'll end up burnt into 2 heaps of ashes. At that time, where will we meet? Pointing directly back into that vulnerability that we spoke about before, that comes with abiding with each other, that we will die, we will be parted, things will happen, friendships will end, you will leave me or I will leave you one way or another. But he's pointing, it's non-conditional. Where will we be then? How will we meet when we are 2 heaps of ashes? And Shanggu tried to respond, but couldn't come up from anything. It's a deep and terrifying question in many ways. Indeed. But later on, while on the road to Kriyan, he took a nap, and when he woke from the nap, he suddenly realized, which is a beautiful bit of process as well, that we can apply to our lives quite a bit. Just take a nap on it and see what happens. But suddenly he understood Shishin's intent, and thereafter he attained the samadhi of perfect freedom. The samadhi of perfect freedom. What is that? So, I'd like to, in exploring this idea of the samadhi of perfect freedom, I'd like to take a look at this word Kalyana Mitra. Again, the word for friendship in Sanskrit. The word Kalyana is often translated as good, as in the Dharma is good in the beginning, the Dharma is good in the middle, the Dharma is good in the end, as we recite in our precepts. And doing all good and foregoing all evil or whatever. But one scholar also points that the word Kalyana is also the word for beautiful. how does that change the nature of our phrase? That the Dharma is beautiful in the beginning, the Dharma is beautiful in the middle, the Dharma is beautiful in the end. Practicing all beautiful dharmas is another way of saying it. There's something in the word beautiful that it's entirely a part of the experience, not containable in rules and not reduced to concepts. A thing is a thing of beauty in often in ways that we cannot point to. I mean, certainly we can have opinions about art and culture and fashion, but there's something about beauty in the deepest sense that is simply a gateway into not a gateway into the experience of the thing itself, a gateway into not to, a gateway into just allowing the sweet olive blossoms to speak for themselves and not be hidden. In the Navajo peoples, they have a concept called Hojo, Hozho, which means beauty just, beauty hyphen just. The phrase it's they have a hojo ceremony which they often use for people who have fallen into addiction, or they use a lot with PTSD veterans who have PTSD. A large process of sitting with a healer, and there's sitting in the middle of a huge sand mandala which they swoop away at the end. But the phrase that they use is with beauty behind me. Sorry, with beauty behind me, may I walk. With beauty below me, may I walk. With beauty above me, may I walk. With beauty all around me, may I walk. And how they use this word of beauty just, or hojo, as a description of a life being brought back into balance, or a life that has always been in balance and just needs to be re-realized in that way. And how that, I love how that relates to this word Kalyana, Mitra. May we, in Kalyana, may we meet. May we walk in friendship above. May we walk with friendship below. May we walk with friendship all around us. The great courage and the great kindness of Kalyana Mitra is to commit ourselves to the mystery of this encounter to the world, encounter with the world all around us that is implicitly always there. Do you see? I am hiding nothing. I am hiding nothing. It is both terrible and beautiful to open to this world. It can break our hearts to love one another and to love the world. And it can also break us open into the beauty of the world as well. We find we are entwined in the lives of every living being, and to make ourselves fully available to live with wholehearted and joyous love, we also open to pain and not knowing and uncertainty. This is what Zazen is. There is no wisdom, though. That we may discover that does not also open us into this friendship. Without kindness and action from the place, the wisdom, any wisdom we discover is cold and sterile, and as Aiken Roshi once said, is just one chopstick. Of course, very difficult to eat with just one chopstick. This is Samanta Bhadra's open heart, kind action, which makes us wise, which stems out of the wise heart. Wisdom has open hands that are willing to act. Wisdom has an open heart. Wisdom has a nose that is always smelling the sweet olive blossoms in whatever form they take wherever we are. This is a big path that we walk through the mountains with our friends, and not a narrow one. So, where do we meet? I'd love to hear any thoughts or experiences or insights, complaints, questions that you may have about this.
Thank you, Kirk. So if you would like to ask a question or comment, just put your hands in Gasho and I'll call on you. And it's always beneficial to engage spontaneously in Dharma discussion, so please don't hesitate to comment or ask. I've just got a note here about recording. End recording. Okay, I'm going to end recording. There we go. So please feel free to ask a question of Kirk or to comment. Fiona.
Thank you, Kirk. In listening to you, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm learning a musical piece, a song. It's a Japanese song called Tone no Funa Uta. Tone no Funa Uta, and the idea you're bringing alive in me the idea of the idea of this song, which is about a river. It's something like this. It is a big river, but it's not it's the biggest river, but it's not the longest river. It meanders. It covers much territory. So it's the biggest river, but it's not the biggest in volume. It's not the biggest in length. So this idea, yes, thank you.
That's a wonderful image, Fiona. It's funny. I was just talking with one of my students. They were doing a koan called "In a Well That Has Never Been Dug." Someone is pulling up the water, and all of a sudden he realized all wells have never been dug because the water is always all coming from all around. Any waters we have is going all around the world. Always, it's the widest river. All rivers are of one river, of one big river of water coming through and into the rain cycle and so forth. So yeah, I love that image of the great river. Thank you for that. And that's our lives too, isn't it? A metaphor for our lives of one great river that has no boundaries and no end.
Yeah, perhaps. I guess I'll just add one more thing, and that is when I was 18 years old, and I was heavily, I'll just share this briefly, but I was heavily made up for a ceremony, and I was feeling pretty conspicuous and pretty, ordinary. And a very wise person said to me, "Beauty, you are the most beautiful person in the room." And I looked around and I thought, no, that's not true. But this idea about beauty, I looked into the idea of beauty, like you're saying. It's just, and what I took away was beauty is something that can never be destroyed.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you. So we just came out of the 7-day Rohatsu Sesshin at the Santa Cruz Zen Center. And that was the first time that I had done a 7-day sesshin. And at the end of it, I think part of it, I was just so tired from sitting. And my mind was so still, but you could really feel, the mind is so still and open. And I remember it was in the morning, after the second sit, there were some wild geese that flew by. And you could hear the wild geese. And I think that's where we meet, in the sound of the wild geese flying by, when you take a sip of your tea, when we heard the birds that were just singing while Fiona was talking. I think that's where we meet. Thank you.
Yes. Where we allow ourselves to penetrate into and be penetrated by the wild geese. And particularly coming out of Sesshin, particularly if it's our first time as well. These things that we've experienced 100 times in our lives, but all of a sudden, you walk down the street that you've walked down 100 times, and all of a sudden, that tree, or the geese. It's a wonderful, yeah, a wonderful experience to be penetrated by life, interpenetrated by life that way. And I'll add too, it's nice to hear an North American accent again. Dogen has that phrase, to advance towards the 10,000 things is I've forgotten what the word he used, but is not quite the way. But to allow the 10,000 to be things to advance and confirm themselves, that is enlightenment, and that's the geese right there. I think I cut you off there, though, Nettie. Were you about to wait to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. I was just going to ask if someone wanted to sit in Zazen and kind of contemplate, I hide nothing from you. Have you got any suggestions on how they might work with that idea that nothing's being withheld?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just as you said, sitting with that as a phrase, and finding maybe one key part of it, one watu, one little part of that phrase to repeat perhaps with your breath for a while. Hiding nothing, for instance, hiding nothing, and then just every once in a while, like you take a stone and drop it into a lake, and then the stone disappears, but you watch the lake ripples. Just watch what happens in your body as you sit with that question. I'm hiding nothing from you. See what comes up out of that experience, rather than trying to solve it as a question. Just allow it to solve you in that way. Yeah, that's a
Uh,
wonderful idea.
yeah, thank you. And just while I'm thinking of it, whereabouts is this koan or this conversation about the nodding rocks? You mentioned Yun Men and the nodding
Yes,
rocks. I'd love to find that because it's just such a beautiful image.
I heard it from Joan Sutherland, and I
Mhm.
don't remember where I heard that from. Right, it stuck in my mind, but yeah, it's Yun Men, so probably it's in the record of Yun Men as well. But
Okay,
I heard it from Joan Sutherland, Roshi.
thank you. She heard it from some rocks.
Yeah. Yeah. You ever have one of those days though where just nothing really happens? You might be working in the garden and or sitting by a stream or something like that, and it just feels like the whole world has been nodding to you. And someone asks you, "How was your day?" And you're like, "Vast and immense," but you really can't say that to people who don't really understand. So you just say, "Fine." How is Sashin? What am I gonna say? Good.
So any last question or comment before we close? All right, then we'll
Uh,
finish with a closing chant. Oh,
Hi, Travis is trying to say
oh,
something. The
Kai, go ahead,
mysterious
Kai.
Yeah,
Kai Travis, I must say.
I'm trying to say, I appreciated your including the Dene language, Hojo.
Oh, yes.
Where did you pick that up?
When I lived in the States, I studied a lot around Native American traditions. And yeah, I took a class in that in college. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you. I love the poetry and all the other references that you made. It's always comforting to know that people who came way before us who weren't necessarily Buddhists were still thinking along the same lines.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
hiding. Lots of people are not hiding anything from us.
Lots of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kirk. We'll finish with the closing chant and we'll just do 3 bows together. Normally we'll be in the Zendo, but circumstances changed. So we've got a
Yeah.
few people.
I hope the people who are infected are all right. Best wishes to you, and
Yes.
to all of you. Yeah.
Things are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you again to Kirk, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.
Thanks, Nadine. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Okay.